Fight or Flight is about a mercenary who's trying to track down a target, but must protect the subject when everyone is out to get them both. Hey everyone, welcome to Cinema, where we focus on the film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Fight or Flight. Was it good, was it bad, or somewhere right in the middle? Or if you're waiting for this review to decide if you're going to see it or not. Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe if you haven't already to join in the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole and taking it right into the positive. Overall, this is a film that's visceral, it's fun in the nature of what it's doing, it's violent, it goes into the R rating, which does do a strong effect, especially in the third act of the movie, where things get extra bloody, extra mayhem type of what they're doing with the action, and the camera work is fantastic, and the way they do all the fight choreography is just so good with how they utilize the camera and being able to track all the fight choreography makes it just that much better. The way they do all these different stunts, getting you sort of not claustrophobic, but stuck on this plane, and being able to use that limited space in order to do all these fights, moving here and there, going across the seats, going to different levels of the plane, and also having to have a small little mystery at the beginning about who this target is, not knowing who he or she is to begin with, the way they all come about with that, and having this agency that's in charge of the mercenary that's going about. Joshua Hartnett plays that mercenary. That's just really well versatile with his role here. There's just so much to his character that when you compare to his last performance character in Trap, it's just not necessarily as much that you get from Trap that you really get to exploit all of his performance here. There's a point where he's really high. You get something that's really funny in the nature of what you see, especially during the fight sequence, that really bleeds upon the nature of where you're going. There's unexpected twists here and there where you're taking ideas about certain characters that really does something great to the nature of the story that's not your typical action movie. It's really bearing down on the idea of this being a plain action movie, and while we have seen ideas and things like it before, there's still a pump to this that really amps up the volume of where they utilize all that action. Again, what I'm talking about with the choreography of everything that's played out and tracked out throughout, and the way that acting is all played out is good for how you're following about where this story is headed, and the amplifying nature of what all is the background knowledge to these different mysteries you have to figure out, the connection of the mercenary to the agents that are in charge of him, and everything that could have gone bad in his past, and figuring out how that evolves throughout the film, as well as figuring out who this ghost sort of target is and why they're after him or her, is something that's important to the nature of where you're evolving this story as a whole. And another positive is I'd like to say this is a quick tempoed film that while you get all this exposition, there's certain moments here and there where you're understanding where Joshua Hartnett comes in as the mercenary, what you're doing with the agency, figuring out where the ghost is, but the way they go about it is just a snap of the finger here and there, doing different action scenes throughout there. There's small bits of downtime, of course, you're having to progress and do and learn about new moments or new reveals to what all is going on. There's certain elements to that that just goes out in a nice tempo that's really progressive, that doesn't last 2 hours. And even though it's over 90 minutes, which can be the breaking point depending on what you are ultimately looking for, it ultimately earns its runtime for what it actually gradually progresses its story into, because of all the great rewards you get for watching the action, the brutality of the bloody mayhem that ultimately goes about at the end. Which takes me into the mix elements. There's some things that can be a little bit over the top, even a little bit for me, but at the same time, it's something you can't take too seriously in one sense. It's not the action movie where you can sense all the logic, all the rules go into consistent sense, and it is a bloody scene here and there. So if you're not into too much violence, too much gore in one sense, it's not necessarily guts and everything spilling out. It's just the blood splattering. So it's something that I'm wanting to make you aware of, depending on what sort of action film you are into. This does have curse language, so just depending on what all your violence and cursory tolerance is, this can be on a little bit of the higher end, even though it can be still contained within this one space, which there is some cliche moments. What we're doing with some of the characters, the way their motivations come throughout, can be something I kind of expected. I even didn't necessarily see certain moments of the reveals, but the way other things come about, there's other reveals that I had a hunch on and I was right with. So the outcomes of certain situations can either become predictable, maybe not to everyone, but still have a similar idea that you're maybe expecting, or don't necessarily come about with the strongest build-up to where they progress this story as a whole, which can create some questionable ways of going about what they're exactly doing with the storyline as a whole. And taking it into the negatives, ultimately there's some things that can be a little bit flawed with the way they resolve certain things, other parts to this story that feels like this is a sequel to something we never got, and the way it ends is sort of leading up to another part of the story that I honestly haven't heard about a sequel, don't know if they're meant to be leading into a sequel. So it ends sort of on a cliffhanger type of deal that sort of is a weird resolve to this story as a whole that I don't expect we're getting another film. Maybe there is something in the works, but ultimately, because it also was a little bit of a flop in theaters, didn't it hasn't been getting as much money. I don't necessarily see the sequel coming about getting the attention it deserved for the way they build up all the action and the way they progress this story. I felt they really could have capped it off here. Whether they do plan on leading on to something else or not, it's something that really builds up a resolve to something that we may never see, and also never really gotten a prequel to, that this film feels like it's crushed right into the center of. Which takes me right into my rating, which I have to rate this a simply 7 out of 10. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Fight or Flight. Was it good? Was it bad? Or somewhere right in the middle? I'd love to know your thoughts, because we all have various opinions about what we receive from film as a whole. So make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe if you haven't already, to join in film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So that's just all, and make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.